The blue-white star of Xanthari Prime cast long shadows through the crystal spires of the Galactic Council chambers. Ambassador John Carter stood at the human delegation's modest platform, watching as representatives from 100 worlds filed into the vast amphitheater. Their forms varied wildly. Some floated on anti-gravity fields, others scuttled on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained within mechanical shells. John adjusted his plain gray uniform, feeling underdressed among the elaborate robes and biosuits of the other delegates. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago, and humanity was still considered a minor species, barely worth notice among civilizations that had mastered faster-than-light travel when humans were still discovering fire. "Another emergency session," muttered his aide, a young woman named Lisa Martinez. "Third one this month." John nodded, his weathered face creasing with concern. Something was happening at the galaxy's edge, something that had the advanced races nervous. The usual chatter that filled the chamber before sessions had been replaced by hushed whispers and worried glances. The crystalline chime of the council bell silenced all conversation. Councillor Zethkan, leader of the Xanthari delegation, rose from the central dais. His elongated blue form shimmered as he activated the holographic display system. "Honored delegates." Zethkan's melodious voice filled the chamber. "We face a crisis unlike any in recorded history." The hologram showed a star map of the outer rim. Entire systems were marked in ominous red. 3 days ago, we lost contact with monitoring station Gamma 7. Yesterday, the Kelthani colony in Sector 9 went silent. This morning, he paused, his usually steady voice faltering. This morning, we received a final transmission from the Draconi homeworld. The hologram shifted, showing a massive planet. The Draconi homeworld was famous for its triple-layered city rings visible from space. The image flickered, then showed the same location. Where the planet should have been, only debris remained. Gasps and cries erupted throughout the chamber. The Draconi were one of the oldest races, their technology so advanced it seemed like magic to younger species like humanity. "What force could destroy an entire planet?" asked the Benzite representative, their gaseous form pulsing with agitation. Zethkan gestured and the hologram changed again. This time it showed tactical data, sensor readings, and blurry images of something dark and writhing. "Our analysis indicates the return of an ancient threat, the Vorthak swarm." The name sent a ripple of fear through the older delegates. John had to access his neural implant to find the reference. Apparently, the Vorthak were a legend, a story told to frighten young species. Biomechanical horrors from beyond known space that had last appeared over 10,000 years ago. "The swarm doesn't just destroy," Zethkan continued. "It consumes. Entire planets are broken down to their base elements and absorbed. The swarm grows stronger with each world it devours." The hologram displayed the swarm's projected path. It cut through the outer territories like a blade, heading straight for the galactic core. "What of our defenses?" demanded the Cortex ambassador, their crystalline body resonating with each word. "The combined fleet should stop this threat." Zethkan's next words chilled the chamber. "The Third Fleet engaged the swarm near the Helix Nebula. 700 of our most advanced warships." He paused. "They lasted 4 hours." The silence was absolute. The Third Fleet represented the combined might of dozen major civilizations. If it had fallen so quickly, their energy weapons had no effect, Zethkan explained. "The swarm adapts to each attack. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, dimensional disruptors, all useless after the first few volleys." John felt Lisa tense, beside him. Earth ships were considered primitive by galactic standards, still using fusion engines and projectile weapons. If the advanced fleets were helpless, what chance did humanity have? "The situation grows worse by the hour," Zethkan continued. "Our long-range sensors show the swarm dividing into multiple tendrils. At current speed, they will reach the inner systems within 40 cycles." "We must evacuate," shouted the Therian delegate. "Save who we can." "And go where?" countered another voice. If they consume the core worlds, there will be nowhere to run. The chamber erupted in arguments. Ancient alliances crumbled as each species considered saving themselves. John watched the chaos with growing concern. Earth lay in the swarm's projected path. He activated his platform's communication system. Counselor Zethkan, Earth requests permission to speak. The room fell silent. Many delegates turned to stare at the human platform with expressions ranging from surprise to disdain. Humans rarely spoke in full sessions, usually content to observe and learn. Zethkan nodded graciously. The council recognizes Ambassador Carter of Earth. John stepped forward, his voice steady despite the attention of 100 alien races. Earth offers our full military support in this crisis. A ripple of amusement passed through some sections. The Zephyrian delegate actually laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your primitive ships, your chemical rockets and metal projectiles, the swarm would consume them in seconds. John remained calm. With respect, our methods may be different, but we've survived our own trials. We learned to adapt, to find unconventional solutions. This is not some border skirmish between primitive tribes, scoffed the Altarian representative. This is the Vorthak swarm. They have consumed civilizations that mastered space travel before your species developed language. Nevertheless, John persisted, Earth stands ready to contribute. Our entire fleet, our industrial capacity, your enthusiasm is noted, Zethkan interrupted gently. But perhaps it would be best if Earth focused on evacuating your colonies. The inner systems may have time to prepare defenses. John saw the dismissal in their eyes. To them, humanity was still the newcomer, the primitive race that had barely managed to leave their home system. He bit back his frustration and nodded. We understand. But our offer stands. As the session continued, plans were made for massive evacuation efforts and last-stand defenses. The greatest military minds of the galaxy proposed strategies, all variations of the same energy-based weapons, that had already failed. Lisa leaned close to John. They're not even considering alternatives, they're too set in their ways. I know, John replied quietly, but we'll prepare anyway. Contact Admiral Patterson. Tell him to ready the fleet. The session dragged on for hours. Reports came in regularly, each worse than the last. The mining worlds of Sector 12, silent. The research stations near the cosmic wall, destroyed. The agricultural planets that fed half the galaxy, consumed. Near the session's end, an emergency transmission interrupted the proceedings. The hologram flickered to life, showing a Zenthari admiral aboard a flagship. Counselor, we've engaged the enemy advance force near the Sentinel stars. The admiral's voice was strained. Our weapons, they're not working. The swarm adapts too quickly. We're falling back to... The transmission cut off. After a moment, tactical data flooded the display. The Fifth Fleet, 900 ships strong, had been annihilated in less than 6 hours. Panic gripped the chamber. Delegates shouted over each other, demanding immediate action, proposing wild schemes, or simply expressing terror. Through it all, John noticed something the others seemed to miss. The tactical data showed the swarm's movement patterns, their attack formations. Lisa, he whispered, look at the way they move, the way they attack. She studied the display. Then her eyes widened. They swarm the largest energy signatures first. They're drawn to power outputs. Exactly. And what do our ships use? Fusion reactors with minimal emissions, kinetic weapons with no energy signature until impact. She paused. They might not even notice us until we hit them. John nodded grimly. The council session was ending in chaos, with each delegation hurrying back to their ships to warn their homeworlds. As they prepared to leave, Zethkan approached the human platform. Ambassador Carter, the Zenthari leader, said softly, I apologize if we seemed dismissive, but you must understand. The swarm is beyond anything your people have faced. Save who you can. That is all any of us can do now. John met the alien's multifaceted eyes. We'll do what we can, Counselor, but don't count Earth out yet. As they left the chamber, John sent a coded message to Earth's High Command. The advanced civilizations of the galaxy had failed to stop the swarm with their sophisticated weapons and superior technology. Maybe it was time for a more primitive approach. The galaxy's greatest armies were falling, but humanity hadn't had their turn yet. The war room aboard the Earth Scout ship Horizon hummed with activity. Commander Alex Rodriguez stood before a wall of screens, each showing different angles of the battle unfolding near the Perseus arm. His crew watched in grim silence as the pride of the Zephyrian Empire engaged the Vorthak swarm. "Sweet mother of," whispered Lieutenant Danny Brooks, his eyes wide. "Look at the size of those ships." The Zephyrian dreadnoughts were legendary throughout the galaxy. Each one measured nearly 50 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack moons. Today, 12 of these titans had formed a battle line against the advancing swarm. "Beginning tactical analysis," announced Captain Emma Williams from her station. Her fingers danced across her console, recording every detail of the engagement. Zephyrian fleet opening fire with primary weapons. The view screen lit up with brilliant lances of blue-white energy. Quantum cannons that could punch through planetary shields fired in perfect synchronization. The beams struck the leading edge of the swarm, creating explosions visible from light minutes away. For a moment, it seemed to work. The biomechanical horrors writhed and burned under the assault. Chunks of swarm matter, each the size of city blocks, tumbled through space. "They're doing it," breathed Danny. "They're actually—" "Wait," Emma interrupted. "Look at the sensor data." Alex leaned forward, studying the readings. His heart sank. Where the energy weapons had carved through the swarm, the creatures were already adapting. Their dark, chitinous armor was changing, developing a crystalline structure that reflected and absorbed the incoming fire. "Second volley from the Zephyrians," reported another crew member. This time the energy beams splashed harmlessly against the swarm's evolved defenses. The quantum cannons that had been so effective moments ago now seemed no more dangerous than flashlights. "They're adapting too fast," Emma said. "Each attack teaches them how to defend against it." The Zephyrian commander apparently reached the same conclusion. The massive dreadnoughts began launching missiles, antimatter warheads that could vaporize asteroids. Thousands of them streaked toward the swarm in glowing waves. The first wave detonated in blinding flashes. When the light faded, gaps had been torn in the swarm's formation. But as the second wave approached, the creatures did something unexpected. They spread out, creating a living net that caught the missiles before they could detonate. The weapons were absorbed into the swarm's mass, their antimatter cores somehow contained and neutralized. "Impossible," Alex muttered. "They just ate antimatter weapons." The battle turned into a slaughter. The swarm surged forward, engulfing the first dreadnought. The mighty warship's shields flared and died. Within minutes, the vessel was being torn apart, its hull dissolving as the swarm consumed the metal and energy. "Commander," Emma called out, her voice tight. "I'm detecting something. The swarm isn't just destroying those ships. It's learning from them." On screen, parts of the swarm began to glow with the same blue energy as the Zephyrian weapons. They had absorbed the technology and were now using it against its creators. One by one, the dreadnoughts fell. Ships that had stood guard over the Zephyrian Empire for millennia were reduced to scattered atoms in minutes. The last vessel tried to retreat, engaging its hyperdrive. The swarm followed it into hyperspace, emerging moments later, with fragments of the ship's hull still dissolving in their mass. 12 dreadnoughts, Alex said quietly. Gone in less than an hour. His crew stood in stunned silence. If the Zephyrians couldn't stop the swarm, what hope did anyone have? "Sir," Danny spoke up. "We're receiving a wideband transmission. It's from the Cortex Collective. Put it through." The main screen shifted to show the crystalline forms of the Cortex, one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. Their bodies resonated with psionic energy, and their mental powers were said to be unmatched. "To all ships in range," the lead Cortex intoned, their voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. "We are engaging the swarm with our full psionic might. Stand clear of Sector 47. Alex ordered his ship to maintain safe distance while keeping sensors focused on the engagement zone. The Cortex had gathered their most powerful scions, beings who could move planets with their minds and see across dimensions. Space itself began to warp around the Cortex fleet. Reality bent as they unleashed their mental assault on the swarm. For creatures with a hive mind, a psionic attack should have been devastating. At first, it seemed to work. The swarm's movements became erratic, uncoordinated. Individual creatures broke from the main mass, drifting aimlessly. They're disrupting the hive mind, Emma observed, breaking the swarm's unity. But then something changed. The scattered creatures began moving with purpose again, but not toward the Cortex. They were surrounding them. "Oh no," Emma whispered. "They're not disrupted. They're hunting." The swarm had adapted again. Instead of one massive hive mind, they had fragmented into thousands of smaller networks. The psionic attack that should have paralyzed them had only made them more dangerous. The Cortex realized their error too late. The swarm closed in from all directions. Worse, some of the creatures began to pulse with psionic energy. They were learning to use mental powers themselves. The screams that echoed across the communication channels weren't made with voices. They were psychic death cries as the most advanced minds in the galaxy were consumed and absorbed. "Cut the feed," Alex ordered, his face pale. Even humans, with their limited psionic sensitivity, could feel the echo of that mental anguish. General Marcus Johnson's voice crackled over the secure channel from Earth Command. "Commander Rodriguez, report. What's your assessment?" Alex took a deep breath. "Sir, the swarm adapts to everything. Energy weapons, antimatter, psionic attacks. They learn and counter within minutes. The galaxy's most advanced weapons are useless." "What about their movement patterns? Weaknesses?" "Captain Williams has been analyzing the data," Alex replied. "Emma?" Emma pulled up her findings. "The swarm operates on certain principles. They're drawn to energy signatures. The bigger the signature, the more aggressive their response. They absorb technology and biological matter to fuel their growth. But there's something else." She highlighted sections of the battle recordings. "Look at their reaction times. When the Zephyrians switched from energy weapons to missiles, there was a delay. When the Cortex shifted their psionic frequency, same thing. They adapt quickly but not instantly." "Anything else?" the general asked. "Yes, sir. They seem to have trouble with simple physics. A Zephyrian fighter crashed into them. At sublight speed. No weapons, just momentum. It took them several seconds to adapt to that. They're designed to counter advanced technology, not basic kinetic force." There was a long pause. Then the general spoke again. "Continue observation. Do not engage. We need more data." "Understood, sir." Over the next hours, Alex's crew watched as fleet after fleet fell to the swarm. The Altarian Grand Armada with their phase shift weapons, the Draconi System Defense Force with their controlled black holes, the Ancient Preservers with technology so advanced it defied understanding. All fell. All were consumed. "Commander," Danny said quietly, "I'm picking up refugee ships, millions of them. They're fleeing toward the core worlds." The screen showed the exodus, countless vessels of every size and configuration, packed with frightened beings fleeing their doomed worlds. Behind them, the darkness of the swarm spread like spilled ink across the stars. "There's something else," Emma added. "The Galactic Council is broadcasting on all frequencies." The familiar figure of Counselor Zethkan appeared, but he looked different. His usually pristine robes were disheveled, his bearing no longer confident. "To all civilizations," he began, "our combined forces have failed. The swarm cannot be stopped by any weapon in our arsenal. We advise all species to evacuate threatened systems immediately. May the ancient stars have mercy on us all." The transmission ended. In the war room, Alex's crew exchanged glances. The mighty Galactic Council, which had dismissed Earth's offer of help just days ago, was admitting defeat. "Sir," Emma said slowly, "I've completed my analysis. I think our weapons might work." Alex turned to her. "Explain." "The swarm expects energy weapons, exotic particles, dimensional manipulation. But our railguns? Our nuclear missiles? They're just metal and atoms moving very fast. No energy signature until impact. No complex technology to adapt to. just pure kinetic force. It's too simple for them, Danny added, understanding dawning on his face. They're prepared for civilizations millions of years ahead of us, not for people still throwing rocks. Alex nodded slowly. Get this data to Earth Command, all of it. He looked at the screens showing the advancing swarm. If we're right, humanity might be the galaxy's last hope. As the Horizon prepared to jump back to Earth space, Alex took one last look at the battlefield. The greatest armadas in galactic history lay in ruins. The most advanced civilizations were fleeing in terror, but humans had always been good at fighting. And sometimes the simplest solution was the best one. Earth's moonbase had never seen such activity. In the vast underground hangars, thousands of workers and robots labored around the clock. Sparks flew from welding torches as new weapons were mounted on old ships. Conveyor belts carried shells, the size of buses toward waiting cargo vessels. President Maria Gonzalez stood in the command center, watching the organized chaos through reinforced windows. Around her, military advisors and scientists worked at dozens of stations, coordinating humanity's response to the galactic crisis. Madam President, Admiral Lisa Martinez approached with a datapad. The fleet recall is complete. Every human ship with a working engine is heading home. Maria nodded, studying the numbers. 300 ships. Not exactly impressive by galactic standards. No, ma'am, but they're ours and they're ready. Lisa's expression was determined. We've retrofitted them all with kinetic weapons, railguns, mass drivers, even old-style cannons on some of the smaller vessels. Dr. Kevin Park joined them, his lab coat stained with grease. The young scientist had barely slept since the crisis began. We've made a breakthrough, he announced, holding up a small device. Nuclear-pumped projectiles. Basically, we put a tiny fusion bomb behind a tungsten rod. When it detonates, it pushes the rod to 15% light speed. Will it work? Maria asked. In theory, yes. The swarm adapts to energy weapons, but this is just metal moving very fast. By the time they detect it, it's already hit them. The president turned to her defense secretary. What about production? Every factory on Earth is making ammunition, the secretary replied. Car plants, phone factories, even toy manufacturers. If it can work metal, we've converted it. The orbital foundries are melting down asteroids for raw materials. Time frame? 2 weeks for full ammunition loads, but we can start operations with what we have now. A communication officer called out. Madam President, we're receiving reports from the frontier. The swarm has broken through the barrier worlds. They're only 5 systems away from us now. Maria felt the weight of command. Earth had always been seen as the backward child of the galaxy, barely worth noticing. Now, they might be everyone's last hope. Colonel Mitchell, she called to a scarred man standing near the tactical display. Your team is ready? Jake Mitchell nodded. 12 squads, fully equipped. We'll go in quiet, grab what we can, and get out. Remember, we need swarm samples and rescued refugees. In that order. Understood, ma'am. The colonel's mission was crucial. While the fleet prepared, special forces teams would conduct raids on swarm-controlled space. They needed to test their theories before committing to full battle. Hours later, Mitchell's stealth ship dropped out of hyperspace near a devastated world. The planet had once been home to millions of Therians. Now it was a dead rock, stripped of all life and resources. Swarm presence confirmed, the pilot whispered. They've left a harvesting cluster in orbit. Through the viewpot, Mitchell could see them. Creatures that looked like a nightmare fusion of machine and flesh, each one the size of a skyscraper. They moved in perfect coordination, breaking down the planet's moon for raw materials. Take us in slow, Mitchell ordered. No energy emissions. The ship drifted closer, using only minimal thrusters. The swarm creatures showed no sign of noticing them. They were focused on their task, tentacles of dark matter reaching out to consume moon rock. Fire Team Alpha ready, Mitchell spoke into his comm. Remember, kinetic weapons only, no energy signatures. His team loaded their weapons, modified rifles that fired hypersonic metal slugs. No lasers, no plasma, just old-fashioned bullets pushed to incredible speeds. "Now," Mitchell commanded. The cargo bay doors opened silently. In the vacuum of space, his team fired without sound. The metal slugs crossed the distance in seconds, striking the nearest swarm creature. The effect was immediate and devastating. The projectiles punched through the creature's armor, sending chunks of biomechanical matter spinning into space. The creature writhed, its tentacles flailing as it tried to adapt to the attack. "It's working," someone whispered. "Keep firing," Mitchell ordered. "Don't give them time to adjust." More slugs struck home. The creature began to break apart, its hive-mind connection severed. The other swarm entities turned toward the threat, but they seemed confused. Their sensors, designed to detect energy weapons and exotic particles, couldn't properly track simple bullets. "Grab samples and fall back," Mitchell commanded. His team used magnetic grapples to pull in pieces of swarm matter. As they retreated to their ship, the remaining creatures finally began to respond, but their movements were sluggish, uncertain. "They don't know how to fight this," the pilot observed. "They're trying to adapt, but there's nothing to adapt to. It's just metal hitting them." Back on Earth, the samples were rushed to Dr. Park's lab. The scientist worked feverishly, analyzing the alien tissue under every scanner available. "Incredible," he muttered. "Their cellular structure is designed to absorb and redirect energy, but kinetic impacts cause direct structural damage. They can't absorb momentum." President Gonzalez reviewed the mission footage with her staff. One squad took out a swarm creature. The galaxy's best fleets couldn't do that with thousands of ships. "We need to scale up," Admiral Martinez said. "The test worked, but those were just scouts. The main swarm will be different." "How different?" "Intelligence estimates millions of creatures, maybe billions. They'll adapt eventually, even to kinetic weapons. We need to hit them hard and fast before they learn." Maria made her decision. "Begin Operation Stone Age. All ships, all weapons. We show the galaxy how humans fight." The name was deliberately chosen. While other species had fought with technology so advanced they seemed like magic, humanity would win with the oldest concept in warfare: throwing rocks. Very fast rocks. Earth's shipyards worked at impossible speeds. The destroyer Normandy received 2 massive railguns that ran the length of its hull. The carrier Texas had its fighter bays converted to house kinetic bombardment platforms. Even civilian ships were armed with mass drivers welded to their hulls. Dr. Park's nuclear-pumped projectiles went into mass production. Each one was simple: a tungsten rod, a small fusion device, and a basic targeting system. No complex electronics for the swarm to hack. No energy signatures to track until the moment of impact. Reports from the front grew worse daily. The swarm had consumed 3 more systems. Refugee fleets clogged the space lanes fleeing toward the galactic core. The Council sent increasingly desperate messages, begging any surviving fleets to make a stand. Then came the news everyone had dreaded. Long-range sensors detected a massive swarm force heading directly for Earth. Millions of creatures gorged on the technology and resources of dead worlds. "They know," Admiral Martinez said grimly. "Somehow they know we're a threat." President Gonzalez stood before Earth's combined fleet. 300 human ships, armed with weapons that would have been familiar to warriors from Earth's ancient past. Projectile weapons scaled up to space combat. "All ships," she broadcast. "Today we show the galaxy that sometimes the old ways are best. Our enemies expect shields and lasers. We give them Newton's laws and very hard metal. Earth stands ready." The fleet moved out, accelerating toward the edge of the solar system. Behind them, Earth's orbital defenses powered up. Mass drivers capable of launching asteroids, railguns that could fire across planetary distances. In his laboratory, Dr. Park made final adjustments to his weapons. Colonel Mitchell prepared his Marines for ship-to-ship combat, using magnetic boots and projectile weapons. Admiral Martinez studied approach vectors and firing solutions. The galaxy had fallen to an enemy that adapted to any energy weapon, any advanced technology. But humans had learned their warfare in a harder school. They knew that sometimes the simplest solution was the best one. As Earth's fleet approached the designated battle zone, They received a message from the Galactic Council. Counselor Zethkon himself spoke, his voice heavy with defeat. Earth, vessels, this is futile. Return to your world, evacuate who you can, the swarm cannot be stopped. Admiral Martinez responded for all humanity. With respect, Counselor, you tried it your way. Now we try ours. The stage was set. The swarm approached, a cloud of death that had consumed civilizations. Earth waited with weapons that belonged in a museum. But as any human soldier could have, told the galaxy, sometimes the oldest tricks work best. The Trigon system was famous throughout the galaxy for its 3 suns that danced around each other in perfect orbital harmony. The orange giant, the blue dwarf, and the yellow star created a spectacular light show that had inspired poets for millennia. Today it would become a battlefield. Admiral Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of the battleship Missouri, humanity's flagship. Around her, 300 Earth vessels had formed into battle groups. They looked small and primitive, compared to the massive alien dreadnoughts that once ruled these space lanes. Swarm contact in 30 minutes, reported Captain Bill Thompson from the Vanguard fleet. Jesus Christ, Admiral, there are millions of them. Lisa studied the tactical display. The swarm filled space like a dark cloud, blotting out stars as it moved. Sensor readings showed biomechanical creatures ranging from fighter-sized organisms to monsters bigger than cities. All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. Remember your training. We hit them before they adapt. Short bursts, maximum velocity projectiles. Don't give them time to learn. In the fighter bays of the carrier Enterprise, Lieutenant Amy Chen ran through final checks on her spacecraft. Unlike the sleek energy fighters of other species, human fighters were basically engines strapped to guns. No shields, no lasers, just titanium armor and rotary cannons that fired depleted uranium rounds. Listen up, people, Amy addressed, her squadron. We're the crazy humans bringing bullets to a space fight. The galaxy thinks we're insane, let's prove them right. Her pilots laughed nervously. They all knew the odds. The swarm had destroyed fleets 100 times their size. But those fleets had relied on energy weapons. Humans had a different idea. Swarm entering maximum weapons range, the tactical officer announced. Lisa nodded. Execute Operation Fastball. Hidden, among the asteroid belt, humanity had placed its first surprise. Rocket motors ignited on hundreds of asteroids, pushing them toward the swarm at incredible speeds. Each rock had been fitted with simple engines and basic navigation. Nothing fancy, just tons of stone and metal moving at significant fractions of light speed. The swarm's leading edge hit the asteroid field. The impacts were devastating. Creatures that could shrug off antimatter weapons were pulverized by simple rocks. The kinetic energy of the collisions created explosions visible across the system. It's working, someone shouted, but Lisa remained focused. They'll adapt. Main fleet advance. Fire when in range. The human ships surged forward. As they closed, distance, railguns charged with electromagnetic energy. These weapons had been considered obsolete by galactic standards for thousands of years. Today they would save civilization. Firing solution locked, reported the weapons officer. Fire. The Missouri's main guns spoke. Tungsten rods, each weighing several tons, accelerated to incredible speeds along electromagnetic rails. They crossed the distance to the swarm in seconds, striking with the force of nuclear weapons. Where the projectiles hit, swarm creatures exploded. No adaptation, no absorption, just pure kinetic destruction. The rest of the human fleet opened fire, filling space with metal death. Fighter squadrons, launch, Lisa ordered. Amy Chen's fighter shot from the launch tube like a bullet from a gun. Around her, hundreds of human fighters swarmed toward the enemy. They flew in loose formations using unpredictable patterns that confused the swarm's targeting. Remember, people, Amy called out. We're not dogfighting. We're doing strafing. Runs, get in, empty your magazines, get out. Her fighter dove toward a cluster of medium-sized swarm creatures. At 3,000 meters, she opened fire. The rotary cannon spun up, spitting out thousands of rounds per minute. The hypervelocity bullets tore through alien flesh like paper. The creature she targeted writhed and broke apart. Its companions turned toward her, but she was already gone, engines at full burn. Other fighters followed her example, darting in and out like angry hornets. "Admiral," Captain Thompson's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got a problem. Big one, bearing 027. Lisa looked at her screen and felt her heart skip. Rising from the center of the swarm mass was something huge. A creature the size of a small moon, its surface covered in organic weapons and sensor arrays. "All ships concentrate fire on the command creature," she ordered. The human fleet redirected their weapons. Railguns, mass drivers, and missile tubes all aimed at the massive target. The barrage that followed would have leveled continents. Projectiles struck the giant creature, blasting away chunks of armor and flesh. But it kept coming, seemingly ignoring damage that would have destroyed a dozen normal swarm entities. "It's not working," someone reported. "That thing's too big." Lisa made a quick decision. "Dr. Park, are your special weapons ready?" From the science vessel Einstein, Kevin Park responded. "Nuclear-pumped projectiles are loaded. But Admiral, we've only got 12 of them. Then we make them count. Target the creature's center mass. Fire when ready." The Einstein's cargo bay opened. 12 cylinders, each containing a fusion bomb and a tungsten penetrator, launched toward the command creature. They looked tiny against its bulk. The first weapon detonated a kilometer from the target. The nuclear explosion compressed and accelerated the tungsten rod to 15% light speed. It struck the creature with unimaginable force, punching deep into its body. 11 more followed in rapid succession. Each impact created a tunnel of destruction through the alien mass. The creature's movements became erratic, uncoordinated. "It's working," Park shouted. "The kinetic damage is disrupting its neural network." But the battle was far from over. The swarm, perhaps sensing the threat to their command structure, pressed their attack. Millions of creatures surged toward the human fleet. All ships, defensive. "Formation," Lisa commanded. "Continuous fire, all weapons." The space around the three suns became a storm of metal. Human ships fired everything they had. Railguns, cannons, even missiles with conventional warheads. The primitive weapons created a wall of kinetic death that the swarm crashed against. Amy Chen's fighter group had a different problem. Smaller, swarm creatures adapted for space combat were learning to predict their attack patterns. "They're getting smarter," her wingman reported, "starting to dodge our fire." Amy gritted her teeth. "Then we stop being predictable. Follow my lead." She dove straight toward the nearest swarm fighter, engines at full power. At the last second, she fired her maneuvering thrusters, spinning her craft while maintaining forward momentum. Her guns never stopped firing, creating a spiral of bullets that the creature couldn't avoid. The tactic worked, but it was dangerous. Several human fighters collided with swarm creatures, both destroyed in the impact. But for every human lost, dozens of swarm entities died. The command creature, wounded by the nuclear-pumped projectiles, made a final, desperate move. Its massive bulk accelerated toward the human fleet, intending to ram them. "It's going to hit us," the tactical officer warned. Lisa saw an opportunity. "All ships target the damaged sections. Pour everything into those wounds." The concentrated fire of 300 ships focused on the gaps torn by Dr. Park's weapons. Railgun slugs, cannon shells, and missiles poured into the creature's exposed interior. The effect was catastrophic. The command creature's internal structure collapsed. Its massive body began to break apart, chunks the size of mountains drifting away. With their commander gone, the swarm's coordination shattered. Individual creatures continued fighting, but without the hive mind's guidance, they became easy targets. "Press the attack," Lisa ordered. "Don't let up." The battle raged for 3 more hours. When it finally ended, space around the three suns was littered with the wreckage of swarm creatures. The human fleet had lost 60 ships, but they had achieved something the galaxy thought impossible. They had won. "Admiral," the communications officer spoke up. "We're receiving signals. Hundreds of them. It's the refugee fleets. They're asking if it's safe to return." Lisa looked at the tactical display. The remaining swarm forces were retreating, fleeing toward the galactic rim. They had learned a lesson about human warfare. "Tell them the road is clear," she said quietly. "And send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them Earth's primitive weapons just saved their civilization." As reports of the victory spread, alien ships began arriving to witness the aftermath. They saw the debris field, scanned the weapon signatures, and realized the truth. Humanity had defeated the swarm not with advanced technology, but with the oldest principle in warfare. Sometimes the simple solution is the best one. The Great Hall of the restored Galactic Council looked different now. Where once only the most advanced species had held positions of honor, a new section had been added. The human delegation area, once a small platform in the back, now stood among the permanent Security Council chambers. Ambassador John Carter adjusted his dress uniform as he walked toward his new seat. The eyes of 100 species followed him. Some looked at him with respect, others with awe, and a few with embarrassment. The primitive humans had saved them all. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Three Suns. The swarm still existed, lurking at the galaxy's edge, but they no longer advanced. The creatures had learned to fear kinetic weapons and stayed far from inhabited space. Counselor Zethkon rose to address the assembly. The Zenthari leader looked older now, humbled by recent events. "Today we formally recognize Earth as a permanent member of the Security Council. Their courage and innovation saved our civilization." Applause filled the chamber, a sound made by dozens of different appendages. John noticed that the Zephyrian delegation clapped the loudest. Their empire had lost the most ships to the swarm. Before humanity's intervention, Admiral Lisa Martinez stood at the tactical briefing podium. She had become a legend throughout the galaxy, the human who had led the impossible victory. Images appeared on the holographic display as she spoke. "The swarm has established a defensive perimeter here." She pointed to a region near the galactic rim. "They've shown no aggressive movements for 5 months. Our patrol ships maintain constant watch." "What prevents them from adapting to kinetic weapons?" asked the Altarian representative. Lisa smiled slightly. "They have adapted to some degree. But kinetic weapons are simple physics. You can't absorb momentum. You can try to dodge or deflect, but if we hit you with enough mass at enough speed, you break. It's a universal law." The explanation seemed to satisfy the assembly. The discussion moved to other matters. Rebuilding destroyed worlds, establishing new defense protocols, sharing technology. Dr. Kevin Park had been invited to present his research on hybrid weapon systems. The young scientist looked nervous addressing such an august body, but his excitement about the subject overcame his fear. "We're developing weapons that combine our kinetic technology with other species' advances," he explained. "Railguns that fire projectiles containing Cortex psionic disruptors. Mass drivers launching Zephyrian energy containment units. The best of both approaches." The assembly listened intently. A year ago, they would have dismissed such primitive concepts. Now they took notes. During a break in the proceedings, John found himself in conversation with several alien ambassadors. The Therian delegate, a being that looked like a mixture of crystal and light, spoke first. "We owe you an apology, Ambassador Carter. We dismissed your offers of help. We thought ourselves superior because of our technology." John shook his head. "No apology needed. We all learned something important." "What lesson is that?" asked another delegate. "That advance doesn't always mean better. Sometimes the old ways work because they're based on simple truths. A rock thrown hard enough is still a rock thrown hard enough, whether you throw it with your hand or a magnetic accelerator." The memorial service came next. On a world near the galactic core, a monument had been erected. Black stone from Earth stood alongside crystal from Zenthari and metal from Zephyr. The names of every ship and soldier lost in the war were inscribed, in 100 languages. President Maria Gonzalez had traveled from Earth to speak at the dedication. She stood before the assembled crowds, her voice carrying across the plaza. "We gather to remember those who fell, from every world and every species. They died, believing that life in this galaxy was worth defending. Today we prove them right. The monument included a special section for the human ships lost at 3 suns, 60 vessels and their crews who had paid the ultimate price for victory, but their sacrifice had meaning. The galaxy lived because they had fought. Colonel Jake Mitchell had been promoted to general and now commanded the new Galactic Defense Force. It was a mixed unit, combining human Marines with alien soldiers. They trained together, learning each other's tactics. The Benzite troops are having trouble with projectile weapons, his aide reported. Their gaseous forms make recoil difficult to manage. Mitchell thought for a moment. Have them focus on guided missiles, less recoil, more precision, and pair them with human spotters who can handle the heavy guns. This kind of adaptation was happening everywhere. Alien shipyards were adding railguns to their vessels. Human ships were being fitted with alien shield generators. The galaxy was learning that combining different approaches created stronger solutions. The research station, orbiting Jupiter, had become a center for military innovation. Scientists from dozens of worlds worked together, sharing knowledge that had once been closely guarded secrets. The Cortex psionic amplifiers work perfectly with our targeting systems, reported one team. We can now guide kinetic projectiles with thought alone. Another group had developed armor that combined human steel alloys with Zephyrian energy-absorbing crystals. The result could withstand both energy weapons and kinetic impacts. Amy Chen, now Captain Chen, commanded a new type of squadron. Her pilots flew hybrid fighters that combined human kinetic weapons with alien maneuvering technology. They patrolled the border regions, always watching for signs of swarm activity. Contact on long-range sensors, her wingman reported during a routine patrol. Single swarm scout probing our defenses. Amy watched as the creature approached, then quickly retreated when it detected their presence. They're still testing us, looking for weaknesses. Think they'll ever try another major attack? She considered this. Maybe, but they know what happens now. They know we're ready. Back on Earth, the changes were visible everywhere. What had once been a backwater planet in the galaxy's view was now a center of military production. Orbital shipyards worked constantly, building new vessels for the combined fleet. Schools taught alien languages alongside human ones. Earth's universities hosted students from 100 worlds, all eager to learn about human engineering and tactical thinking. John Carter walked through New Geneva, the city that had grown around Earth's new galactic embassy. Alien architecture, mixed with human designs. Restaurants served food from across the galaxy. Children of different species played together in parks. He stopped at a memorial wall where messages from across the galaxy were displayed. One caught his eye, written in the flowing script of the Preservers, one of the oldest races. We thought we knew strength. We measured it in technology, in energy output, in the complexity of our weapons. Humanity taught us that true strength is simpler. It is the will to stand when others flee, the courage to try when others surrender, the wisdom to see that sometimes the old ways are best. The War Memorial's inscription was simpler still. Carved in stone, in the common galactic language it read, they called us primitive, we called ourselves ready. As the sun set over New Geneva, casting long shadows across the memorial plaza, John thought about how much had changed. Humanity was no longer the newcomer, the primitive race barely worth noticing. They were protectors now, teachers, showing the galaxy that advancement wasn't always about complexity. Sometimes it was about remembering the basics. Sometimes it was about throwing rocks. The stars shone overhead, no longer hiding terrors that couldn't be fought. The swarm still existed out there, wounded and wary. But so did humanity, standing guard with weapons that the galaxy had thought obsolete. In space, human and alien ships patrolled together. The crews shared stories, techniques, and hope for the future. They watched the darkness between stars, ready for whatever might come. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. When the most advanced weapons fail, when technology reaches its limits, sometimes you need someone willing to pick up a rock and throw it hard enough. Humanity had been throwing rocks since the dawn of their species. They had just gotten very, very good at it.